bookish friends. I'm gonna start filming my first wrap-up clip for February. It's the 8th. I have finished 3 books, not bad. The first one is Family Patterns. This was on my January TBR for the Buzzword-a-thon cover challenge. The prompt was patterns. I don't know if you can see it, but there's like a quilting pattern around the edge and the top. I think that counts. You need a pattern to make a quilt. This is the first book in the Patchwork Mysteries. Our main character is Sarah. Her son and daughter-in-law and 2 granddaughters just moved back. I don't remember if they say what state they live in. If so, I've forgotten. But it's a small town, and they moved there from California into her father's childhood home. And her grandmother, 90 years before, had disappeared without a trace. And then they find the quilt her grandmother had made for her father, and there's a note with it. And so Sarah goes and tries to solve the mystery, and I actually quite enjoyed it. I had low expectations, but because it's guideposts, and I don't know if they're known for quality publishing or not, but yeah, Sarah, it seems like her research is realistic for somebody who's hunting into a mystery from the past and genealogy and all of that. And yeah, 4 stars. I have the next 2 books in the series, and I'll definitely be picking them up at some point. And then I read the 6th book in the Gateway series, The Dark Giants. I read this for the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge because the prompt is size and giants. It was also one of the shortest books on my TBR cart. And I drew this one for science fiction too when I drew my cards. I don't know if I can say much about this because it's book 6 out of 8, but the premise of the whole series is Amelia and her brother and her parents have moved to this hotel in the bush in Australia. Kind of cool to get some Australian culture there. And the hotel is a front for aliens visiting Earth. There's the gateway, which links up to all of these different wormholes that go to different alien planets, and they have the, I forget what they call it, but they make the aliens look like humans. There are human guests at this hotel, and so then there's also the alien guests, and being able to provide for the alien guests while also keeping the fact that there are aliens a secret from the humans is interesting. This one, Amelia has her birthday, although I don't think it actually said how old she turned. My guess is she's about 11, 12, maybe 13, and she has some of her human friends, and hijinks ensue, and I had quite a bit of fun with this. Oh, I did start and finish this on the same day, so I can check off read a book in less than 24 hours. And then I read Love Among the Chickens. I actually borrowed this from a friend, so I can also check off A Wodehouse too, because by P.G. Wodehouse. This one, I thought it was a standalone because there's nothing on the cover or the spine or the synopsis to indicate that this is the first book in a series. Whoops. And I drew this one for standalone. So I'm going to switch this with the Mythmakers for a pretty cover. I know the Mythmakers has a prettier cover, but I still think this is quite pretty. Oh, and there's a skyline in the background, so it counts for the Buzzword-a-thon cover challenge. The prompt for February was skyline, and this one follows, our narrator is Jeremy Garnett, and he's a writer, not a very popular one yet. He's working on novels and stories and such for publication, and he gets roped into starting a chicken farm with his friend Uckridge. And neither Uckridge nor Garnet have ever taken care of chickens or fowls of any sort. And so they end up with all these chickens they don't quite know what to do with, and they end up eating them and trying to make money. And it's never successful, and it's kind of hilarious the troubles they get into. So yes, I've finished 2 of my short books for the shortest month, and one of my books from January. I think the only one I have left from my January TBR that I haven't finished is Thoroughfare, and I'm reading that one this Shatona, and I got ahead of her, so I've just set it aside and worked on other books while waiting for her to catch up. And I'm also reading End of the Sphere. I keep forgetting to read my chapters out of this, so I hope to finish this in February, but we'll see. I'm on chapter 9, and it's the 8th. How many chapters are there? Can I catch up? I haven't read my chapter for today, so that might... Let's see. There are 24 chapters, so yeah, if I keep up with a chapter a day, I will finish this. And then I'm also reading The Mythmakers by John Hendricks. I might actually finish that one today or tomorrow, so yeah, I'll be back with another clip whenever I get to it. Today is the 15th, so I think it's been a week since I last filmed an update. Unintentionally wearing the same sweater. Oh well. But I have finished a whole stack of books in the past week. I read The Dark Giants and Love Among the Chickens, and that just spurred me to read a whole bunch of books on my cart that had fewer than 210 pages, and here we are. Oh, I have these out of order because I talked about them at book club. I guess I'll start with these last 2 books in the Gateway series. Book 7 is The Lost Homeworld. Book 8 is The Lady from Nowhere. I finished a series. Yes! I also read 3 books from the same series in 1 month. It's been a while since I've binged a series like this. But I was so excited to finish a series and knock it off my list. Not much I can say about these because, like I said, book 7, book 8, but they did kind of leave they wrapped up the series nicely. Cerberus Drones is a pen name for a group of 3 writers. So they wrapped up the series, I think, pretty well. They tied up most of the loose ends, but left just enough free to leave you wondering and to potentially do more books. Oh no. You know what I just realized? The numbers don't match up on the spines. That might bug me. But at least the series, they're all the same size. And I have them all in paperback. But anyway. Okay, sidetrack. How many people get bugged by books in series not being the same size and wanting to have them in the same edition? For some reason, it doesn't bother me that my Mrs. Polifax books don't match. Like, I have all sorts of different editions for that, and it doesn't bother me. Maybe I feel like it matches Mrs. Polifax's personality. Anyway, back to the Gateway. This is a elementary, middle grade sci-fi series. It's got, well, there is space travel, but they don't actually travel in space in the books. More like people travel from space to Earth, and they're trying to keep the aliens secret from humankind. And there's all sorts of different adventures. They're nice and short. They still have some illustrations in them. There's about a half dozen illustrations per book. And I'm hoping my 8-year-old will pick these up and like them. But yeah, a good middle grade series. And I think I actually read The Mythmakers first out of this deck. It's beautiful. Look at the gold foil on the spine too. It has pretty end papers. Are they the same? Yeah, they're the same. And the cover is gorgeous. This is an illustrated novel that talks about the friendship between C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, however you say his name. Like I said. So John Hendricks has more graphic novel parts that are told from The Lion and the Wizard that are, he tries to do his best to stick to facts. He asterisks anything that's a direct quote or known information from books, articles, letters, I think even maybe from Lewis's broadcasts. Those are all asterisks, and then a few things he kind of messed about with to just keep the story running smoothly. But there are like actual full text pages in a row. And I thought he did a wonderful job showing how Lewis and Tolkien came to be friends and starting the Inklings and their time together and getting published. And then I think he handled their estrangement very well. I think he showed the estrangement but tried not to make too many assumptions or sorry, my eyes like dry and twitching. Anyway, I think he delicately handled it without trying to make one or the other look too much like a bad guy. And then I finished reading the third Powerpup book, Aloud to My Kids. We had actually started this back in November, so it felt great to finally cross this off. Oh, there's something in there from one of my kids. And this one has just very few illustrations. These are kind of they're superhero. They have Christian themes in them. The Powerpup like prays and stuff to get his powers. Riptide, another superhero, and this one they're in Hawaii covering a surfing contest, and these random shark things keep happening that are out of natural behavior for sharks, and so they investigate that, and the Calvin Powerpup and his two friends are reporters for a city newspaper, you know, kind of like Superman and Clark Kent. And yeah, my kids love this series. So we're really hoping Amanda Trumpower comes out with another book. And I don't think I can say too much more without giving anything away. Excellent read aloud. And I read the 10th book in the Scottish Bakehouse Mysteries series, and I have decided it's definitely time to take a break from this one. I'd actually drawn this one for chilling in the title. I know I had just gotten caught up with, there's a book each month, and I had just gotten caught up and was keeping up, but then I fell behind. I read this one in February and it's in January. And I've just decided it's time to take a break. There are 24 books in this series, and this is book 10. And I can't get them from my library because they're an independently published, well, not independently, it's a small publisher. And my library mostly only can use their funding for the big publishers. And I don't feel the need to buy 24 books. The plots are starting to kind of feel contrived. And so it's time to take a break. But this one is set during Burns Week, which celebrates the Scottish bard, poet, Robert Burns. It was really fun because I've actually been to a Burns night with a group of people when I was in college. We were getting ready to go to Scotland for a week, and we went and had a Burns night at a pub, and it was a lot of fun. And there's a couple of murders. I guess one of the murderers, but the other one felt kind of rushed or abrupt in the reveal. So I think it's time to just take a break. And then the last one I finished is actually a 2-for-1, Snapshot and Dreamer by Brandon Sanderson. All I'm going to say about Dreamer is that it's actually a short story. Sanderson's short stories. He said he wrote 3 short stories for the Skyward series. They were all about 200 pages. That's not a short story. Anyway, this is his attempt at horror. It was interesting. And then Snapshot is more sci-fi. It's set in this world where something can recreate a day as long as it's been in the past few weeks, and the police are using that to investigate crimes. And I thought it was okay. I don't know that I'll keep this because I don't think I'm ever going to reread it, and nobody in my book club is really interested in reading it. Well, the one person I thought who might be interested had already read it, so yeah, this might end up in a little free library. And there's my furnace again. Anyway, I'll be back with another clip. Hello. I meant to film an update last week. Didn't get around to it. So I have almost 2 weeks worth of books to talk about. That's okay. I'll just wrap up the month. I have lots to talk about. I have my reading journal because a couple of these books I don't have physical copies of, which the first one is Where Darkness Dwells by Andrea Renee. I read this on my Kindle because I got the Kindle book for free or cheap a couple months ago. This is the first book in, well, I know there's 2 books in the series so far. I don't know if there's plans for it to be longer, if it's a duology. And, sorry, my girls are in their room playing, using their imaginations. It is what it is. So in this world, there's this veil of, or it's called the Veil. It's like a city or a town of people who, there's no light, there's no sun, they can't see the sky, they can't see the stars. It's all shrouded by these shadow beings. And anytime one of the Solas or light beings come, they hunt them and kill them and sacrifice them to the shadow beings. I forget what they're called. And the bones glow. So they use the bones as a light source. There's also these bioluminescent fungi that they use. And then obviously they can use fire, candles, or lanterns. And I don't know if it's just because I was only reading it a little bit at a time, but it took me a long time to get into the book. I don't know if I'm going to continue the series or not. But one of the main characters, Amira, she has this natural, I don't know if it's a glow or if it's just that the shadows don't get as close to her. And things were just starting to pick up, and so the world building happened, and then starting to get building up to the main conflict in the series, I think, or at least going into book 2. I'm not describing this well, I'm sorry. It's hard to describe it without giving spoilers. And then the next book we finished was actually my homeschool missionary story that we've been doing, which was Gladys Aylward. She was a missionary in China. She started out as a housemaid and didn't really get that much training to be a missionary, but she ended up in China, and she ended up saving like 200 orphans and she became a Chinese citizen and was very well thought of until I think eventually there was political conflict and she had to move back to England after decades of living in China. And yeah, we really enjoyed this one. I think my boys gave it 5 stars. So, and it's in the Christian Heroes Then and Now series. So at this point, we've decided we're just going to start with book 1 and go through. We'll skip over any we've already done, but just to keep it. My son is saying no, it's 4.5 stars. It did get a little intense in a couple of places. Oh, okay. Now on to books I actually have physical copies of. I did read Anne of Avonlea. This is part of the Year of Maud read-along that Chantal Reads All Day is doing, but I also drew it for even number of pages. This is book 2 in the Anne series. So this covers about 2 years, and she's a teacher, and she's definitely mellowed at this point. I don't think I would have been ready to teach at 16 to 18, but things were different back then. I really enjoyed this one. I think I gave it 4 stars. I really loved Miss Lavender. And oh, this next one. This was another homeschool read aloud. We started this in July, and we finally finished it. So it took us about 7 months to get through. We were reading a chapter a day, and there were 93 chapters. We eventually got to the last few chapters, and we're like, let's just finish it. This is Little Pilgrim's Progress, but retold with forest animals. We had read the original Little Pilgrim's Progress, and it was fun to read it again, but with animals as the characters. And oh, continuing my theme of read all the little books, I borrowed The Golden Key from a friend. It's by George MacDonald, and she particularly liked the illustrations by Maurice Sendak. I'm not really a George MacDonald fan, but I had just recently read The Mythmakers, which talks about C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and Lewis especially was a fan of MacDonald. And I'll say this is probably, out of the MacDonald I've read, this was the one that was easiest for me to understand and follow along. And there's not really much I can say about this without giving away the story, because even with the afterword, it's 86 pages. But just people falling into fairyland and their fantastical adventures. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, Shatona and I finished our read aloud of Thoroughfare by Christopher Morley. This was we have Geoffrey, who starts out in England. It took us several chapters to figure out that he's about 8 at the beginning. He's definitely 8 when he's on the ship going to America. And from reading the synopsis, I thought Geoffrey was going to be much older, but this one covers from when he's about 8 until he's 21. And this was a good... My dog, my children are barking. They're keeping themselves entertained though. Anyway, this was a good one to just take slowly and savor, because it's a very slow moving book. It definitely focuses on just the characters, and it's very pastoral, except for a couple of scenes about 3/4 of the way through. Morley does that. He's like, we're going to amble through the countryside, and bam, intense couple of chapters, and he's done that in every one of his books I've read. Parnassus had one, and The Haunted Bookshop had one, and this had one. But it definitely got me through several chapters. But yes, I really enjoyed this one, and I'm glad to check another Morley off. And it was nice to read it with Shatona, because she's the one who introduced me to Morley's works through her references in first Twice Told Tales was the one I read, and then Heart of Knoll has more Parnassus. This is more Haunted Bookshop references. But after reading her books, I'm like, well, I should read those and discover what all the hype is about. And I did really enjoy them. So it was fun to read this one with her, and we were emailing back and forth, and it was a lot of fun. And for my nonfiction books, I have End of Despair by Steve Saint. His father was martyred in Ecuador with Jim Elliot and Macaulay. Oh, I don't remember. Roger Udarian. Why am I'm blanking. There were 5 of them. But his aunt ends up going and living among the tribe who speared his father, and then he eventually goes and lives with his aunt among the tribe for several years. Then he goes to the States, and when his aunt dies, they ask him and his family to come help them to adjust to the outside world. And he realizes that he has to be careful to not just have handouts and stuff. He's there to actually teach them, like, to have the old ones be elders and leaders among the tribe, and how to set up a store and how to charge for things, and all the different things. I really did enjoy this because we had listened to the Christian Heroes Then and Now books for both Nate Saint and Rachel Saint, who's his sister, and we also listened to Jim Elliot. This book does kind of skip around a bit. He would start with a little bit, and then he kind of flashbacks to something else, and then goes back to current events, and I still really enjoyed it, especially when you consider he grew up among a tribe that they had no really good concept of time. They're not a time-driven people. So it makes sense that things would kind of meander a bit. Really did enjoy this one. And I read my March chapter out of The Life-Giving Home by Sally and Sarah Clarkson. This chapter was by Sarah, and she talked about how her mother made their home beautiful, not just aesthetically, but in books they read together, and nature walks, and just making them see the wonder of creation. I have this quote in here I wanted to read. "This is why literature is such a powerful force in shaping the consciousness and cultivating the wonder of young children, directing them to gaze upon the good, true, and beautiful. To read a book by Lucy Maud Montgomery, not just Anne of Green Gables, but also The Story Girl, Jane of Lantern Hill, and more, is to become aware of the natural world as a story in which every day is a fascinating page, with each sunrise revealing a fresh glory. With her words in your mind, it is all but impossible to look out the window with indifference." And yeah, just really inspiring. I am enjoying taking my time and reading a chapter and kind of savoring it and applying it for a month before moving on to the next one. And I've also picked up The Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady. This is another one I'm going to take the year to read. So I read the February ones, which, since England is in a different growing zone from mine, they get their stuff a little earlier. They're a more mild climate, but it's always just so beautiful, and she mixes nature and poetry and different observations of what's going on in nature, and again, another one to just kind of savor So I'm going to go through real quick, give updates. If you don't want all the updates, I'm glad you listened to all the books I read. But for the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge, I read The Dark Giants for size, and Love Among the Chickens, which I borrowed from a friend, for the Buzzword Cover Challenge for Skyline. So far, the only series I've started and read book 2 of is the Anne of Green Gables series. I did, however, finish this Gateway series. I was able to chalk that on off. I've read 16 books this month. Tomorrow's the last day of the month, and I don't think I'm going to finish any others because I'm trying to focus on the Tales of Distant Lands book club pick, which is Cities of Smoke and Starlight, and I'm not quite halfway through. So and it's more than 400 pages, so I don't think I'm going to get that much read. My 5-star reads for the month were The Mythmakers by John Hendricks and End of the Spear by Steve Saint. So then I have to choose which one to be my favorite book of the month for my book bracket. I'm thinking it might be this one because I really gushed about that one. The piles are falling over here. And out of my 25 books to read in 2025, I've knocked off 4 of them with End of the Spear, Thoroughfare, Light Between Worlds, and then Snapshot Dreamer. So I finished 3 of them this month. And on my book bingo, I completed my buddy read. Haven't finished Life Giving Home, but again, I'm not going to finish that till August or September. I have read 10 books that I own. 10 Kindle books. I only have 2 marked off because I think I wasn't going to count the one I finished on New Year's Day because I only read 1 chapter out of it. I haven't participated in any readathons. I have finished 1 out of 3 series. I have tried a new to me author. I haven't read any favorite author backlists. I don't think I should count Anne of Green Gables series. I don't know. What do you guys think? I was thinking of doing that just with contemporary authors who are still writing. Snapshot Dreamer was the one I've read that I've owned more than a year. I haven't done a giveaway yet. I haven't finished my 25 and 2025 list yet. I've read 1 out of 3 Wodehouse books. There's a Free Space. I've been listening to the Gospels, but I haven't finished the New Testament. I've done 3 library books. 2 of them have been audiobooks with my kids. And then 1 of them was just one I read on ebook or tome. I've not read tome yet. Thoroughfare is like 21 page. No, it's about 31 pages short. Yeah. That was proving trickier than I thought. I've completed 3 nonfiction books. I've read a book in 24 hours. I've done 3 rereads. I have not done any Agatha Christie. I haven't done a whole series because I haven't. Anne of Green Gables is the only one where I've read book 2 in a series. I have not done a short story collection. I have read a book within 30 days of receiving it. I've done the friend recommendation. Not done a kid pick. So here's what it looks like. I'm really close to 2 bingos if I do a kid pick or the favorite author backlists. I'll have bingos. I haven't finished February's book. I did finish my January TBR in February. And for my February TBR, I just have 1 left. And then I did my March reading pages, and that is my furnace kicking on. But let's see if we can stack up all of these books without dropping any of them. This isn't even all of them. Out of the 16 books I finished this month, 9 of them were just about 200 pages, a little more than 200 pages or fewer. And like I said, 2 of these were books I had going for months with my kids, and a couple of these I had started back in January, so woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. It feels so good to get these marked off, although 2 of these are still in progress. Let me know what you read in February, and until next week, happy reading!